Well, welcome to Don and Steve Plus. Glad to have you with us as we're joined by Steve Call. Steve is a psychologist. He's an author. And Steve, you've written about marriage, and we're going to get into that topic again in just a moment. But you were just talking before we started recording a little bit. You're out in the Seattle area. How'd you end up out there?
We are in the Seattle area. We're about an hour and a half actually north of Seattle. My father was in the military, and we moved down to Tacoma, which is about an hour south of Seattle, and stayed there for a few years and met my wife to be in high school, and we went to college together and wound up staying in Seattle for ever since then. So I can't even remember how long ago that was, but that was many, many years ago. But we love where we are. We moved north of Seattle about 8 years ago and have really enjoyed being here.
That's super fun, Steve, that you guys have been married for that long. Like you've dated in high school. Did you say that? Dated in high school? Married
Dated in
college? Okay.
Yeah, I did the off and on thing in high school and college.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were engaged our entire senior year of college and got married at the early age of 22. So I was trying to remember yesterday how many years it's been. I don't do math very well. At 38, maybe 38 years, I think we've been married now.
Wow.
38
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Well,
But
so
we've
no wonder
known
you're
each
the marriage
other.
expert, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I don't know if the length of time is always that, but we've known each other since we were 16. That's true. So
Wow.
44 years. Yeah.
Very cool. So certainly over that length of time, you guys have shared all sorts of ups and downs, highs, lows, challenges that you probably never saw coming. But every marriage is going to go through elements of that. And I just, want to take you back to the day you stood there in front of a pastor or priest, and you decided that you were going to commit to each other for better, for worse, that you were going to honor each other. And I'm sure you had no idea what you were actually committing to when you made those commitments or those vows to each other.
So true. I think that's true for most couples. We have no idea what we're saying I do to, especially at the age of 22. I mean, I was naive. I had no idea. My parents, they were married, but it wasn't necessarily a model of marriage that, I wanted to move into or maybe be like. And so it was an exciting time for sure. But I think also had no idea what we were getting into. What do we say I do to? I think ideals, but we have no idea really what's in store for us on the other side until we're actually a part of it.
It's definitely the ideals. You think,
Sure.
we're in love and it's going to carry us through anything and everything. And only if that were true, that it would be that emotional love that would carry you through everything. But there's a deeper love that many couples will experience. What Dr. Steve Call, when after the idealism became reality, what was the first thing that you went, wait a minute, this is not what I said I'd do to?
Yeah, I think it was actually in our first year. And I think for many couples, the first year is often the hardest year. Like, who are you? You aren't who I thought you were going to be, nor am I who I thought it was going to be in the context of this relationship. We had I would say an argument, a fight. We had some conflict in our kitchen. We lived in an apartment. I remember this like it was yesterday. Like, wait a minute, this isn't how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be all bliss. And where it started to take shape or form for us was when I began to realize that part of how we were engaging conflict was basically how it was modeled in our own family of origin. And that was really surprising to me. Like, oh wait, there's an imprint. There's a part of the way I'm being in this marriage that was imprinted early on in my own story, particularly in my family of origin. So I think that's where we had conflict. I thought this was just going to be really easy, good, like no conflict. Because conflict in our family was something to avoid. It was something that often led to high tension and high volatility. So I think it was in probably the 9-month period in our first year where I realized, oh, this is not what I thought it would be.
And so you had learned to handle conflict one way, probably, as you say, watching your parents and the way that they navigated their marriage and differences. Your wife is bringing a totally different, probably, upbringing and way that she had watched her family navigate conflict there. How did you guys learn? And that probably wasn't a quick, easy process, I'm guessing, but how did you learn to navigate some of that?
Well, I think what you just said, Steve, is really helpful. Is that I think for both partners, both spouses, they bring in their own, what we just call individual story, like your own way of, what was imprinted, what you learned. And for sure, the way I learned to deal with conflict was to run. When my father would get really upset and really, I'd just say angry, he would leave, flee, would just say, I'm out. He would leave the house. He might drive away. He just would not engage. For Lisa, it was they did everything they could to avoid any conflict. So it was as if it didn't exist. There was a sense of panic, maybe for her, a sense of, hey, something's not quite right. Oh no, we need to do something about this. And so our pattern is, I tend to flee, and Lisa tends to pursue. It's common. It's a common. It's not always gender specific, but it's a common dynamic in marriage. And that happens still for us. Yesterday we're having some conflict about a particular issue, and there's a part of me that just naturally wants to say, no, never mind, I'm out. I don't want to deal with it. And so it took us, I would say, a few decades before we began to realize, oh, wait a minute, something's being reenacted, something's being remembered, something's so familiar about this. And it was actually in therapy where we started working with somebody that tried to help us navigate those moments of disconnection, moments where we turned away in conflict, to help us turn toward each other.
Well, I appreciate that. Even the doctor will seek a doctor when there's
Oh,
conflict.
yes.
And you need to have somebody be that go between, that person that can help you both understand. You're coming at this from different viewpoints, different experiences, different story, and yet you can resolve this conflict. You've done that for a lot of folks as you have specialized in marriages and helping people get back on track. You say, like all the things that will derail a couple. What are a couple of the top, like what's the top two? I'm going to guess. Is it money?
Yeah, money is one of them. You're
Okay.
referring to conflict, like areas of conflict that really where
Yes.
couples struggle. Yeah, there's four. There's
Yes.
four of them. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what name those four for us?
Sure. Money, how we spend time with family, what we call leisure time. So you named the finances. We would also say uh, the other part of how we struggle in conflict is sexual intimacy. The ways in which different ideals, different struggles, different heartaches, what individuals will bring into the story. So those tend to be the major ones. John Gottman and his wife down in Seattle, they've done lots of research with couples, and they say 70% of those areas of conflict are what they name as unresolvable, meaning we spend enormous amount of time trying to resolve something we can't really resolve, particularly in the areas of finance, particularly in the areas of leisure, particularly in the areas of intimacy and struggles in that area. So the invitation that we want to bring readers is, how can we navigate conflict in a way that actually invites connection rather than promote disconnection? Especially when we might see conflict as something to avoid, or something that sends the message there's something wrong with us.
Man, that's so big. And so I'm thinking, if 70% of these issues are things that in one sense or another are not resolvable, then where's the hope in that?
If somebody were to say, what's the one word? Like if we had one word in terms of conflict or tension, what's the goal? Like I often ask couples that I work with, I'll say, what if you had a goal or you had a vision statement around conflict, what would it be? And often the first response is something like, to win, or to convince the other that they're wrong and I'm right. And I think what we have tried to redirect and reframe conflict, it's actually meant to be a form of understanding, a form of intimacy. We make ourselves known in conflict. So there's the rewriting of the script is maybe it's really about cultivating understanding. Maybe it's about seeking to be understood rather than, or seeking to understand rather than seeking to be understood. That's just such a common. I mean, I know in conflict when I'm with Lisa, like I have a lot of energy. The way she's thinking about something, what are you talking about? Why is it that way? Rather than help me to understand. Like that is, if we could again rewrite the script, help me to understand what's going on for you. What does that mean to you? And I think for so many of us, that is such a pattern that's so difficult to disrupt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those patterns, they're learned. They are ingrained, and they are really difficult to dig below the surface and uproot if need be, or certainly reconfigure. And I know you and Dr. Dan Allender in the Deep Rooted Marriage, Cultivating that Intimacy, Healing, and Delight, talk about getting below the surface. How easy is it to even scratch the surface?
Such a good question. I think for many of us, we're pretty guarded. We're careful. Why would I want to go into the past? Why would I want to unearth or go into the roots of my past, which we refer to as our story, the way in which we grew up, our family of origin? It takes, I think, a tremendous amount of courage to actually wonder, maybe part of my past is being played out in the present in my marriage. That in and of itself is the gateway, I think, to change, is when there's just a little bit of openness, vulnerability, if you will, around, I wonder what's in part of my story and how it's being played out in my marriage. And so I think scratching the surface is the invitation to be curious. Maybe there's a part of my story that's being played out, being re-experienced, being remembered, that is causing some of the tension or some of the disconnect or some of the loneliness, even in my marriage, that I might experience. So I just think it takes a really tremendous amount of courage for couples and or one to say, maybe there's something underneath the surface that we're not really aware of that's contributing to what we're experiencing.
Sometimes, if we're not necessarily aware of what that might be, but we suspect, maybe we have a suspicion, like, I think I might be reacting because this is a part of my story. But history says it's not safe to share that with this person, because every time I try and open up and be vulnerable with them, they weaponize that in some way. And so for I hear you say you need to be, have courage. But Steve, if history says that courage is going to equate to my pain being weaponized in some way, I don't know that I want to have the courage to step into that.
It's so true. Lisa and I are yesterday. We're going for a walk around one of the favorite places we like to go for a walk around. And if you were watching us, I think you would see a window into what you're just naming and reflecting. When we go for walks, for me, it's what I would just call the sacred time. It's without interruption. I grew up with a mother that was highly distracted, highly unavailable, for good reason, for so many reasons, but not what we call a lot of attunement, just not a lot of emotional presence. And so my story literally is I crave moments of what we would just say presence. When Lisa's present with me emotionally, that means the world to me. But when she is distracted for some reason, I tend to get a little irritated. I would say a little bothered. I would even go to a place of what we just call shame. I'm not important. I don't matter. I'm not that significant. So we're at this beautiful walk around the lake. It's snowing out. It's just this really, I don't know, Disneyland, fairyland type of moment. Well, one of our daughters, our youngest daughter, calls. And Lisa sees the phone. She picks up the phone out of her pocket and she says, "It's our youngest daughter. What do you think?" Meaning, how are you if I answer the phone? Now, this is one of those moments every couple struggles with. Like, okay, what do we do in this moment? Well, it's really difficult for me to say something like I just told you, "Hey, we're having a really sweet moment. I'd rather you not talk to our daughter." I said okay, even though it wasn't okay for me. She's on the phone with Ellie, our daughter, showing these pictures. It's wonderful. It's on video. But after a while, I was like, okay, maybe we want to hang up. Maybe we want to continue our walk. And it kept going. Lisa decided at some point she got off the call, and I was bothered. What do I do when I'm bothered? I'm silent. I don't engage. That is one of those moments where my story got activated, triggered, remembered. And that is the moment where, yes, somebody might say, "What keeps you from saying something to Lisa?" It's freaking risky. Like, why would I want to express the vulnerability of, "Hey, that was really hard for me." When you answer the phone or you stayed on the phone with our daughter, I felt unimportant. I felt like, we lost the sacredness of our moment. That's really risky for anyone to ever speak, much less anybody that's doing this work personally, but also doing this work with people that I work with. And for us, it's not so much the weaponizing. It's what if what I offer is minimized or dismissed or ignored, or, "Oh, really? It's not that big a deal." And therein lies the tension for so many of us, is the minimizing of our pain is almost unbearable. And so we refrain, we hold back, we don't name it. And so I think we bear a tremendous amount of privilege when the other expresses pain and vulnerability, of how we respond well. And what does kind empathy, attunement look like, sound like? And I would say we will go to our grave wrestling with moments like that, because of the vulnerability it requires.
Steve, I think you just described every married couple
Yeah.
known to man.
Sure.
Yeah, For sure. And when you recognize your own story and what you're describing, and you go, yeah, either you're the one that goes, why? That's not that big a deal. I don't know why you're making such a big deal of it. And then you've got the other one that shuts down or gets angry. Okay, so we've named it, but what do we do about it? Because oftentimes I think, well, it'll be the same person possibly coming back every time saying, you're right, I shouldn't get mad. Let me just explain why this bothers me. And the other person is just like, okay. Is that normative too? That it's usually one person over the other saying, okay, to de escalate, I'll give in.
I think so. There's often a primary, what we just call pursuer, somebody that just pursues and says, hey, what's up? What's going on? I think, I mean, that's part of our theme throughout what we write there is a process of humility. I think that it invites each of us into is, am I willing to own the way I've hurt my wife? Am I willing to own the way I've harmed my wife? When I withhold, when I stay silent, it is really difficult for Lisa because of her own story. She was literally shut out, particularly by her mother, closed door, no access. And so something gets really disrupted when I go silent. And so our place, I think what you're inviting listeners into is what is asked of me, invited of me to move toward repair. What does good repair look like? And that for many couples, that's the process of therapeutic work, working with somebody other, something that helps them work toward repair that is out of kindness, that is a place of humility that says, I want to own the way I've hurt you. I want to own the way I've harmed you. Can I start there? Sometimes and sometimes not. I want her to pay for the hurt that I feel. And I think for many couples, that's part of the struggle. So yes, sometimes there's one that pursues and initiates, but I think part of the hope in that is, what does good repair look like? And I think for every couple, that is part of the struggle, is how we repair.
All right. So I want to hear your thoughts on repair and explain that a little bit, because earlier you said 70% of these things can't be resolved. And some of us, we may hear repair and equate that to resolve in some sort of way. And so how do you define repair?
We think of repair, think of conflict as rupture, literally the tearing, the disconnect, the turning away. Repair isn't necessarily with the intent to have like blame, accuse, say where you have failed, what's wrong with you, that kind of mentality. I think part of the hope is in the repair, it's to cultivate understanding. The repair isn't just to resolve it. It isn't just to say, okay, I'll no longer do that. It's to be curious, I think, about what was happening for you, what was happening for me. There is a tremendous amount of intimacy that occurs in the process of repair. We feel seen, we feel known, we feel soothed. When Lisa's face and body turn toward me, when I'm upset, hurt, bothered, frustrated, disappointed, it's incredibly soothing. Same, when I turn toward Lisa, it's very soothing. It's what we crave in the repair. It's not just see it my way, think it my way, feel it my way. It's this childlike part of us that's deeply, deeply soothed. Like cortisol level lowers. In the exposure being seen, there's something about, oh, that's what intimacy is. So I think repair is a process of cultivating intimacy for many couples.
And when you talk about turning toward one another, hearing one another, containing the other one's story so that you can respond empathizing, it just seems though, if all of those things that have buried deeply into us behavior wise, Dr. Steve, that when I turn toward my spouse, I'm going back to the behavior that's programmed, not the behavior that maybe I want to share. Maybe I want to continue to turn back toward Ben, but I've got bad habits. How do I start to recognize, to hear, to change, to listen, to turn? Like, what is a first step that you would recommend to somebody who's really had a hard time even owning their own backstory?
It's a really kind question, actually, because it's inviting us to the ultimate place of awareness. I think that's the part that for many of us, we're not really aware of what my behavior might be connected to. What's going on for me? Are we asking ourselves that question of curiosity, or are we asking ourselves that question of judgment? That is I mean, if we could rewrite the way in which we interact with one another, is there room for being curious? What was going on for me? What happened for me? Rather than what's wrong with me? I keep doing the same thing. Again, we hear accusation and judgment, which is actually what shame is rooted in. Shame is this sense of accusation, judgment. There's something wrong with me. It debilitates us sometimes. We don't know where to go, what to say, what to do. So I think awareness is such a key part. The other part is the other, meaning Lisa plays a really significant part in my life in becoming aware. And I do that for her. I think that's the beauty of what marriage is designed to be, is we need the face of the other to be able to say, hey, what happened? Where'd you go? That's why Genesis 3, when God pursues Adam and Eve, we hear that question of where are you? We often hear that as accusation rather than out of curiosity. Where are you? Where did you go? What happened? And so I think that's the privilege of marriage, is we get to be the face in those moments and to actually ask that question out of kindness of, hey, what happened? You seem irritated. You seem bothered. Do you want to check in? You seem really quiet. You seem withdrawn. Those are statements of honor rather than statements of accusation.
Steve, I can just imagine a scenario where a husband and wife are beginning to maybe practice some of this. They're trying. And as you begin to say, I wonder if maybe the reason I'm acting this way is because of, and the other spouse is like, yes, and I've been trying to tell you that for the past 6 years. And when, they like,
Yeah, sure.
The other spouse might be able to fairly accurately diagnose that, but I hear you saying maybe containing their story and asking leading questions is far more effective than coming out with that diagnosis.
Yeah.
Much more helpful and effective than I told you so, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there are things that I know about Lisa and that Lisa knows about me, but often I'm not able to hear because of the vulnerability of that's exposing. I think sometimes when Lisa and I and couples, when there's an offering of pursuit, when we are pursued with curiosity, hey, I wonder what that might be about for you. I teach at a graduate school for master's degree in counseling, and they pay a lot of money to learn the two words, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder. That is, it's like, again, if you ask me two words that can have such a healing balm for couples in tension, I wonder is out of curiosity. It's a reframe of, I don't quite get it, but maybe it might be connected to this. Like there's an offering of wondering and reflection rather than an offering of truth. None of us respond well when something is named for us as the truth. We respond well when something is offered as reflection or possibility. And I think that's so true for couples. They could be 1 month in, or they could be 50 years in marriage. When it's offered as a potential place of reflection and invitation, we all like to have an RSVP. When we're invited, we like to have the RSVP, the option of yes, no, maybe. I think of that in conflict. I think of that in tension. I think of that in awareness is I would like the option to be able to choose how to respond.
And those responses go then relearning from our bad behaviors to this deep rooted marriage, which is what you and Dr. Dana Allender are trying to bring us to in this new work. And as you talk about something with reconnection and repairing and restoring, you then talk about walking through fire. Now that just doesn't sound as fun as, I wonder. How do we get from I wonder to fire? Because I think I want to stay at I wonder and then just be healthy from there.
I think of the fires like burning, literally. Like yesterday, going on the walk,
Mm.
every part of me that felt like I can't bear this. This is too much. I think that's what we mean by that imagery. It's too much to bear. I'm remembering what's familiar for me, a sense of abandonment, a sense of I'm not important. So I think that how do I get to the other side of that? By, yes, being aware, but also Lisa gets the partner in that with me, and I get to do that for her as well. So I think that's the beauty of it is I don't know how we move toward any kind of redemptive experience without experiencing the heartache of what our body remembers. And I think for many couples, that's unnamed, unspoken, unrevealed. That I think that's in the roots, that's in the soil of their marriage. Is we invite our couples, the intensives that we do, other experiences, is we really want to get into how is that past story, the past history, past relationship being played out in your current day marriage.
And for a lot of couples, as they begin to open up that story, and maybe they are both on the same page and they want to learn to contain and repair, if they are walking with God, certainly that can play a huge component in their relationship as well. So where does inviting Jesus, where does inviting faith into this kind of fit into the whole thing?
Well, I don't know if this is a radical statement, but it is sometimes in other contexts. If we actually believe Scripture when we are made in the image of God, if I actually believe that, if I pause and believe that, if I allow that to be true, I think the core privilege is we are then the face of God on behalf of our spouse. Now that's where I think for many of us, what like that's wild. That is just simply wild that I have the privilege, although I fail and I fall short on behalf of Lisa and her for me as well. I think that's the core invitation in marriage is I get to be the face of God on behalf of her. I get to be what wasn't true in her story. There's a redemptive quality to that. So I think that's where it's foundational. It's almost like, can we almost assume that? But I think for many of us, so much gets stirred up in that. The privilege, the responsibility. Oh man, maybe there's a goodness in that, but also that can feel and be really overwhelming, but so invitational if we can reframe the purpose and intent.
Reframing, though, is work. It's
Yes,
work. It
it
takes
is work.
effort. It's emotionally draining. It's
That's
hard
so
to
true.
relearn. And yet we want the results, don't we?
We do.
But we want to kind of wave the little magic wand as opposed to hitting our knees, maybe, or maybe we're hitting our knees and asking the Lord, change my spouse, when really
Mm,
our
mm,
cry is change me, change me.
mm,
And one of the things that you mentioned that is a definite change, it's a change in language, it's a change in posture, is about being defiant against the things that divide us as
mm.
opposed to defiant toward one another. That is really, really pivotal, Dr. Steve.
It is. As we approach something like our conference this weekend, we are so aware that evil really has a strategic quality to it. And I think for many couples, that's part of where it's difficult to honor that the division. It's not me against you. I think evil does not want us to thrive in our marriage. And that often is the war. If we can allow it to be named, if we can allow it to be accessed, acknowledged, I think that is so helpful. Particularly true for Lisa and I. When we are in tension and conflict, it's not this default of, oh, it must be evil at play. But I think we are more prone to allow evil's strategic response of, you're the enemy, Lisa's the bad one, there's something wrong with you. And I think for many couples, that's where they struggle. So the war is against the one that wants to divide. And can we acknowledge that? Can we actually allow that to be part of what we're battling, literally? So that has been a really hopeful reframe for Lisa and I in particular. And I think for so many of the other couples that we've worked with is, let's acknowledge who the enemy actually is.
Yeah, huge to, I know Susie and I have had to have that conversation at times like, you are not the enemy, you know?
Not the enemy. We're on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we know we are on the same team and we can look at the enemy together as the enemy, world of difference. There's a sense of vulnerability that we're probably more likely to have. I feel safer. Like you said, you feel
For sure.
seen when that happens. If somebody is trying to work towards that and they feel the conversation devolving, you start to go down the old path instead of the new path that you are working to do. How do you handle it? Is it as simple as calling a timeout, or what do you do to not go down that path any further?
This is a really, again, wonderful question, Steve, because it is where many of us struggle. When we want to rework or redo some of the patterns that we're in, we can get really overwhelmed. We can get flooded. It's difficult to stay present. I love the word pause. Can we pause here? Not can we end here? Can we pause here? Can we take a break for a little bit? Can we come back to this? Would you be okay with that? The pause is such a necessary intervention when we feel overwhelmed. Many of us know it doesn't go well when we continue to try to work something out that we don't have the capacity to work out. So the pause, if we, again, another word, if we take any other word, pause when we are overwhelmed. Pause is collaborative. Pause is, I'm a little overwhelmed. I think I'm a little flooded. Can we, and here's the deal in that, is we can only pause if there's a reassurance of return. Hey, I'm a little overwhelmed. Can we take a break? Can we pause? Can we come back to this sometime later tonight? Would 5 or so or 6 work for you? How about tomorrow morning work for you? The one that is being asked to collaborate in the pause can bear it as long as there's a reassurance of return. I think that's such a crucial part of any tension, conflict, pausing. The intervention, the tactic, if you will, the strategy of pause can be so helpful if we are committed to the returning when we could return. For many of us, when the other pauses or needs to pause, it's almost unbearable to wait. The distress in our bodies is almost unbearable. So that reassurance is a really significant part. So the pausing, I'm a little overwhelmed. You seem a little overwhelmed. Not out of accusation. You seem a little overwhelmed, but maybe we need to pause here. Like, again, it has an invitational tone, but I think pausing is also extremely protective. It's a form of protection. We don't do well when we try to work out something that cannot be resolved. It escalates. It can create division. So it feels like a protective measure, but also a form of safety for one another.
And sounds like all of those steps help build trust back into the relationship. Oftentimes, that's something we lose right away when those bad behaviors are part of the conversation. Then the trust goes out the window. You don't feel safe. We've used that word because we all resonate with that. We understand what a safe room feels like and what an unsafe room feels like. And if it's with your spouse, that is one of the most disruptive things of life, I think, because if you can't have safety in your home, then it's very challenging to go out into an unsafe world and face those that would come at us there when we want to be the hands and feet of Christ, but we're ill-equipped if our relationships at home are not in a good and healthy place. And I know trust is huge. And that's another reason that you and Dr. Dan Allender wrote The Deep Rooted Marriage and how cultivating intimacy, healing, and delight can be done. It can be done. And I know, Dr. Steve, you would say that if a tool like this is helpful, it also might be helpful to get with a counselor, wouldn't it?
It could be, yeah. We encourage couples that we work with and couples that we interact with to have what we just call safe other, where you just name safety. The safe other, whether that's maybe a relational coach, maybe a pastor, maybe a therapist or a counselor, some trusted person, which again, for Lisa and I has been so significant in our journey. And I think that's often part of those first steps where couples are struggling to find somebody that feels safe to them, that is safe to them, to be able to walk through some of what can't be named or exposed or revealed or shared or talked about in a way that is one of honor rather than one of blame. So safety, again, another one of those words, how we cultivate safety in our marriage. What do we need to cultivate safety? It's essential. I mean, without that, we can't uproot anything. It's so unbearable. So I love that is the reminder, for those of listeners, is safety is key.
Well, and we love that you have taken the time to join us. Dr. Steve Call, one of the authors of The Deep Rooted Marriage, Cultivating Intimacy, Healing, and Delight. And we're going to connect you to this tool in our show notes. We're very grateful for your time. Thanks so much for being our +1.